Ya podemos comenzar.
Okay. Today's Sounds is privileged to interview Rudresh Mahanthappa. Welcome, Mr. Mahanthappa.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Have you ever been to Spain before, or is it the first time?
No, it's not the first time. I've come here as a tourist a few times, and I was actually in Barcelona before. I've met Joan Anton Carrach many years ago, actually, and we've always been in touch. And he invited me once to play a private concert here. And then I've come here with my wife as well for holidays, and so I really love Barcelona, actually. I would love to come here more often.
So we could say that your music represents the fusion of West and East. What has led you to work with jazz and Carnatic together?
Well, it goes beyond the music for me. It's really an expression of who I am. You know, I grew up with a bicultural identity. I feel Indian, I feel American, I feel neither, I feel both, all at the same time, every minute of every day. So to combine jazz and Carnatic music at a very kind of core fundamental level is actually a way of not only expressing my identity, but also exploring my identity. You know, you have to understand that my generation of Indian Americans is the first, you know, I just turned 40 a few months ago, and people of my generation are kind of the first large generation of Indian Americans that are actually going into many different fields, especially the arts, music, visual art, you know, painting, dance, Hollywood, you know, we're everywhere now. And so I think all of us are kind of trying to define that identity and understand how we fit into the American cultural landscape.
So along your musical career, there have been different musicians who have influenced remarkably your way of playing, some from jazz, others from world music. What has Kadri Gopalnath meant for you?
Well, Kadri Gopalnath is very important to me because when I was listening to a lot of Indian music and trying to absorb that information and see what I wanted to do with it, the difficulty I always had, well, you have to understand that Indian music at its core is a vocal music. It's a music that you sing. And with the voice, you're able to do a lot of, the voice is very flexible. You can do a lot of melodic ornamentation. You can slide around. You can do all these things that are a little bit more difficult on the saxophone. And you see with Indian music, when it comes to an instrumental place, it's usually the string instruments that have dominated. The sitar, the veena, the violin, more recently the guitar, the mandolin. But the saxophone, it's kind of a fixed pitch instrument. It's very difficult to do that kind of sliding. So when I first heard Kadri Gopalnath, for me that was a real gateway because I could listen to that album and kind of try to copy it. You know, this is like when I'm 21 years old or something. Kind of try to copy it in the same way that I was doing the same with Coltrane and Charlie Parker and everything else I was listening to. So I felt like I needed a role model, somebody who was doing it on the saxophone. I'm certainly no expert in Indian music, but that kind of allowed me to understand a greater depth of Indian music because I could hear it on the saxophone.
So the electro-acoustic sound is catching on in the present jazz scene.
Sure.
What does the project Sound Deal symbolize?
Well, you know, I think more than ever, there's a great level of technology and a great level of artistry happening in electronic music. People are making beats that are amazing. People are creating sounds that are amazing. You know, you have groups like Autechre, or you have the things that MIA does, or you have Bjork and her production aesthetic. You know, it's quite amazing. For me, I think I wanted to try to tap into that, but I come at it with a different perspective because I've been playing an acoustic instrument for so long. So when I think about the electronic format, I'm thinking more about how I approach that as an acoustic musician and how do I not get carried away with it and still make it, still somehow convey a coherent musical shape. But also at the same time, having this very electric band is, for me, more reminiscent of the music that I listened to when I was a kid, when I was first starting to play the saxophone, you know. People more like jazz fusion, like Yellow Jackets and Brecker Brothers and Grover Washington and David Sanborn. These were the first things I heard that made me want to play the saxophone, that made me want to practice, I should say. Of course, soon after I heard Charlie Parker and Coltrane and others, but sometimes that music that you first hear when you're learning how to play an instrument can be the most important music.
So now we have a technical question. That's how do technical materials such as the saxophone, the mouthpiece, the ligatures, reeds influence your personal sound?
I would say none at all. I think that sound is something that has to be a picture in your head. And then the instrument, the ligature, the reed, the mouthpiece, it's a question of finding the combination that makes it as easy as possible for that sound to come out. I think there's a major problem in the saxophone world where people are trying to find their sound through the equipment instead of hearing the sound in their head first. You know, I call it sound imagination. You know what you want it to sound like, then you go try the instruments. I've been playing the same Yamaha 62 that my dad gave me for Christmas when I was 14 years old. It's the only saxophone I've ever owned, and it's the one I have here tonight. I'm playing the same mouthpiece I got when I was 17 years old. It's a Meyer 6. And I've been playing Van Doren Java 2.5s for 15 years, and I haven't tried anything else. And I have no desire to go try anything else, to tell you the truth.
Okay. So next question is, are you endorsing any brands at present?
Well, only recently I started endorsing Yamaha. And I've been endorsing Van Doren as well. I think, you know, their reeds are great. And I think the Yamaha instruments are great too. I think they have a resonance that I never felt I got from the Selmers, for example. The old Selmers, new Selmers, you know, I don't feel it. But, you know, kind of a different case though, I'm endorsing them because I already use them. I'm not endorsing them because I'm trying something new. You know, I believe in the product because I've been using it for 20 years.
Okay. So when you are by yourself with your saxophone and your papers, how do you face your studio sessions?
Oh, you mean like to practice?
Yeah, like to practice, yeah.
You know, I lack a lot of discipline actually. I've been trying to get better. I think oftentimes I make my own exercises, and I also try to focus on what I can't do. If there's something that I'm having problems with, I'll create an exercise to work on that. And sometimes I'll actually write a tune that maybe it's a difficult finger combination or something. I'll write a tune because then if I want to perform this tune, I have to get better at this. So that's one thing that I'll do. But you know, I like all the French conservatory etudes, like the Marcel Mule etudes, the Loyon etudes. I think those are really good, and they're very difficult. And I think even if you just play half of one every day for 15 minutes, it'll make you a better musician. I've never been the kind of musician that practices every day. I wish I did. And I haven't ever really practiced very long. I think after 2 or 3 hours, that's kind of my limit. But I have to say, I'm always practicing in my mind. I'm always working on something. I'm always visualizing myself playing the instrument, and I'm working on something. When I'm sitting on a plane, when I'm sitting on a train, you know, before I go to bed. Another thing I think is really important, if there's something that you really want to learn, you should practice it right before you go to bed. Because your brain will be working on it through the whole night, and the next day you'll actually be able to do it most of the time.
At present, we think you are teaching in New York. Is that true?
Not really, not so much anymore because I'm so busy. I just, you know.
So in any case, when you teach, you have students, the question is, do you instill fusion music into your students in any way?
No, not at all. I mean, with the students, I try to see what I feel maybe is something they can work on, maybe a weak point or something that's missing, a lot of the students I have who are even more advanced, I try to still talk about the tradition of the music. I mean, I think there's a trend now where